Hi, I'm John Bruchot from archvirtual.com. ArchVirtual is a site that's dedicated to providing case studies and resources and services around architectural visualization within virtual environments. And over the past several years, we've looked at a variety of different platforms that have enabled architects and designers to build their designs within these virtual environments and enable their project stakeholders and clients and communities that they're designing for to actually experience the design online in 3D. And so one of the platforms that we've been hearing the most demand for recently is called Unity3D. Now, Unity3D is actually a game development engine, but it happens to be very powerful for architectural visualization. One of the reasons why is it actually enables you to take the 3D models that you're already developing in your architectural software, your BIM and CAD software, and actually export those models out and import them into Unity. And from there, you can actually publish it out to a variety of different platforms. You could even publish a Nintendo Wii game showing your design, or you could publish a standalone application that your clients can install, or in the case that I'm demonstrating now, you can take your models and actually upload those to a website. So you just embed it within a web browser and send your clients and the project stakeholders a simple URL, and then they can actually experience the design online within their own browser from their own computers. So obviously that's a pretty powerful opportunity, and what I'd like to do now is actually do a quick demonstration showing you how to import a Revit model into Unity. And I'm going to do this very, very quickly. I've got a very simple model and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I hope that it'll help if it's your very first time ever using Unity to get through some of those basic steps involved with importing that model. So the first thing you're going to want to do is go to unity3d.com if you haven't already, and click on Unity and then download now. And that will enable you to download the free application. And there's a pro version, I think that's $1,500 or something like that, but you actually don't need that. You can just use the free version to do everything that we're going to do today, and it's still very powerful. Then once you have it downloaded, go ahead and open it up and create a new project, and specify a folder location where you'd like to put that project, and we're going to call this one Arch Tutorial, and we'll just keep that folder selected. And from in here you can pick a number of different asset packages that will come with it. Let's take the character controller, skyboxes, and terrain assets. As you get to use Unity, you can experiment with these other ones. Some of them are pro only, but we're just going to use the character controller, skyboxes, and terrain assets for now. And then you create the project, it'll reopen it with those assets. So while Unity is importing those standard assets, let's go over to Revit. This is a very, very simple model of my own home that I did that has basically just a crude as-built model of it. Nothing really complex here. It's a very simple model, but we're going to export this into, and hopefully into, Unity. So what you want to do is get into a 3D view. From 2D view it won't work for exporting, but if you're in a 3D view, go to File, Export, FBX. It'll give you the option to save if it's been longer than 15 minutes. In this case, I'm using Revit Architecture 2009, but I've been told the process is similar in newer versions. Now we're going to go back and find that tutorial, and now you'll see that Unity has created that new project, and it's put in 3 different folders: Assets, Library, and Temp. What I like to do is put this within the Assets folder, and I put it right within the Assets folder, and in this case I'll call it the main model. It'll export that. Okay, and once it's done, go back to Unity, and it will now recognize that you've placed assets in that asset folder and will automatically import those. And the reason why that's a pretty powerful feature is that if you go back to Revit now and change it and save it back, save an FBX out to that same file location, Unity will then pick that up and it will actually re-import it automatically and keep the material assignments intact. So we have this model, and sometimes you have to go back to Revit and then back into Unity again. And there, it found the FBM. When you export as an FBX, it will also create an FBM file. Within the FBM file are the materials that were used within the scene. Okay, once those textures and materials are finished uploading, you can now go and you'll see in the project pane, there's an inspector pane, a project pane, and a hierarchy pane. The inspector pane is basically showing you the details of anything you have selected in either the project or hierarchy pane. If I select the main model and drag it over into the scene, in here you'll see the scene and the game view. If this isn't the way you see it, what I usually do, this is my favorite way to look at it, is 2x3 under window, and then you'll get it like this. And what you'll see is that anything that you put into the scene view will show up in the hierarchy. So the hierarchy is basically showing you a list of everything that's actually in your scene, and those are the things that will appear within your game. And here's the model. Again, it's a very simple model, but it's here in Unity. And now what I would always usually do, and I don't know if this is proper protocol necessarily, but I find it to be useful, to go into your standard assets, character controllers, and take a first-person controller. You'll see that it's sort of this medicine capsule shape, but that represents basically a first-person controller. So this would be like a person within your visualization project, and so you can move it in. Obviously, the model is way too small relative to this default asset that comes with Unity. So I like to keep things within what Unity has preset. So I want my model to be that size. I don't know if that's if that matters or not, because everything is relative, but I do that anyway. Now, one thing I wanted to point out, is that on your keyboard, W will give you the move option, and that'll give you these, arrow keys. E will give you the rotate, and R will give you scale, so you can actually scale things. And what I usually do to move the mouse, I hold down Alt and hold down left click, and that will get me in orbit. And if I'm click on something and hit F, it will focus on that. It'll actually orbit around that object. So if I want to go back out to the first person controller, hit F, now I'm orbiting around that. Now, if I select this model once, it will select the whole thing. If I double click, then it'll select an individual mesh, because obviously you can see here that it's brought in every single one of those meshes. So what I do is just click on it once, it grabs the whole thing, or you can just select it here in your hierarchy. And it's usually like 40 times bigger it needs to be. Now if I zoom out, I can see that my first person controller is now, if I line them up to a door, it's a little small, but that's okay. I think that'll work fine. Now if I bring the controller out here into the driveway, you can see that in the game view, this is basically a preview of what the game is going to be like. The game meaning your build. When you actually play or enter the game, the model, you'll see this is what you're going to see. Now there's no contrast, obviously. There's no windows or doors, windows or lights or anything. So what we'll do is create a game object, create other. Let's create a directional light. Directional light is sort of like the sun. It kind of comes in parallel rays that that are kind of universal, and we're going to rotate that around just to get kind of an angle, and we'll turn down the intensity a little bit. And so now you can see that that's showing up in the game view. Now another thing that I'm going to want to do before I try to preview the game is again click on the main model, but actually this time we're going to find it in the project tab, find that model that it imported, and over here in the inspector for the main model I'm going to generate colliders and click apply. And what that'll do is create, just like it sounds, it'll generate colliders, which means my controller won't fall through the floor. It'll actually recognize that there's a mesh there, and it'll stop, and it'll prevent it from just falling through. So now if I click on the game window, maximize on play is what I like to do. Click on play, and it'll actually maximize the view, and here we are. Now if I use the mouse will let me look around. My arrow keys move. Otherwise, you can use your W key, WASD, to move around. Spacebar jumps. So there we are. We're looking at it. It's obviously still very plain. There's no textures and not a whole lot going on in the way of lighting, but it's there. So let's press stop, and now we're back in the view. Go to selecting each one of these. Let's just pick one. Let's go with the roof first. You'll see on the right side there's a bunch of different materials that have been brought in from Revit, and the way, if it's not named intuitively, what you can do is just click on the color and kind of turn it black, and now you can see what it's affecting. Obviously this is the door trim is being affected. I just need a white door trim for now. The aluminum is my roof, and if you select this texture here, it'll bring up a select the texture window here, and you can actually pick the one that you had applied from Revit, because that imported when you imported your package or the materials that came along with the FBM. So then that applies it to everything that's been assigned that material, takes it. So we're not going to have to go through every single mesh in this whole model. You only have to get each one of the materials assigned, and it'll start looking pretty complete. So here we have board and batten. I've got this sort of cedar board and batten. One of the things you're going to have to do is you're going to have to, oops, I hit save accidentally. You'll see that the textures aren't exactly assigned the proper UV repeat repetition. So what I usually do is within this material, I will go like 0.1 and 0.1 until I get it about right. There's probably a more efficient way of doing that, but that seems to work fine for me. Let's see, this is a stained wood. I've got a stained wood material that took all the stained wood. Let's see, with the window, we've got glass. This apply glass. Now if there's any transparency in your texture, you have to change. Each one of these has a shader, and a shader is basically how the texture is treated. I don't know how to better describe that. I'm still kind of on a learning curve with shaders, but we're going to use a transparent diffuse shader, and that'll actually then bring that transparency. Now it's repeating a number of different times, you can see, so it's not quite mapped directly to, on a 1-to-1 for each window. There's a little more to getting the UV maps right, but for now we're not going to cover that in this tutorial. And that'll conclude part 1 of this tutorial.